Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. If you build the perfect, indestructible machine, does it even matter if the person buying it only cares about the size of the screen on the dashboard?
Honestly, it's a terrifying question if you're a traditional car maker.
Right. I mean, we're looking at this fascinating piece today titled BYD is Losing Its Spark. And, it is frankly a perfect lens for understanding this massive, just tectonic shift happening right now in the global automotive industry.
Yeah, it really is the defining transition of our era.
And we aren't just here to recite the corporate history of some car company. We're looking at what happens when a manufacturing juggernaut, one famous for its absolute unshakable dominance in physical hardware, suddenly finds itself fighting a completely different kind of war.
Right.
A war defined by software, by user interface, and, by artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and to really grasp the stakes for you as a listener, we have to look at the ground beneath BYD's feet because it is shifting incredibly rapidly. I mean, they're the world's largest electric vehicle manufacturer.
Which is no small feat.
No, absolutely not. But the entire auto industry is moving away from physical engineering as the primary selling point. They're pivoting hard toward digital ecosystems.
Yes, and that's the core tension here.
Exactly. For years, BYD has relied on a strategy of total, uncompromising control over their manufacturing process. But suddenly, that very strategy, the exact thing that built their empire, is under extreme pressure from companies that view cars less like vehicles and more like, rolling smartphones.
Right, rolling smartphones. And to understand why BYD might be stumbling right now, we first have to look at the sheer scale of the fortress they built. And, more importantly, how they built it. BYD is losing its spark, lays out their origins, and it's super telling that they didn't start by designing sleek cars. They started in battery.
Which gave them a massive foundational advantage.
Huge advantage. The founder, Wang Xuanfu, built this empire on a philosophy of rigid vertical integration. And I mean absolute control freak levels of integration.
Oh yeah, they don't rely on anybody.
They literally run their own lithium processing plants. As of May 28th, they even unveiled an in-house designed semiconductor specifically for self-driving.
Which is wild for a car company to do themselves.
It is.
Yeah.
And the way they pitch this hardware dominance to the public is it's pure visceral theater.
Well, yeah, don't just look at the explosion in their safety demonstrations. You have to look at what that theater represents culturally for them.
Tell them about the drill thing, because that blew my mind.
Okay, yeah. So if you visit their headquarters in Shenzhen, you're brought to a chamber with thick protective glass, and they take a conventional EV battery and bore a drill straight into it.
Is it a normal drill right through the metal?
Literally bore it right in. Predictably, it erupts into this massive fireball.
Right.
Then they take BYD's signature blade battery and they pierce it the exact same way.
Yeah.
No blast, no fire, just a stable, intact battery. And it's so important to understand why that actually happens.
It's structural, right?
Yeah, exactly. A traditional battery is packed with these cylindrical cells, so if one gets compromised, the heat triggers a chain reaction. It's called thermal runaway.
Right, which is why EV fires are so notoriously hard to put out.
Right. But BYD engineered their cells to be long and flat, literally like a blade, and they pack them together in this honeycomb structure. It radically improves the structural integrity of the pack and dissipates heat so effectively that thermal runaway is practically impossible.
Wow.
It's a highly visceral way of proving their chemical and engineering superiority.
And look, you cannot argue with the financial results of that level of control. I mean, BYD operates like a master chef who refuses to just cook the meal. They insist on growing their own wheat, milling their own flour, and, forging their own pans.
That's a great analogy.
And because they cut out all the middlemen and avoid paying markups to external suppliers, they can produce something like the Seagull.
Oh, the Seagull is fascinating.
It really is. It's a high-quality, compact EV that they sell in China for around $10,000.
10 grand for a new EV.
10 grand. It's unheard of here. But then, using that exact same vertically integrated system, they have the luxury Yangwang brand on the complete opposite end of the spectrum.
Right, the ones doing the ridiculous stunts.
Yeah, these are models that can literally float in water or jump over potholes. And they have the Denza line that can crab walk sideways into a parallel parking spot using independent motors for each wheel.
Which is just a flex of pure engineering muscle.
Total flex. And this system pushed them to the absolute peak. I mean, BYD is losing its spark, points out that by 2025, their revenue hit $116 billion.
Incredible number.
They surpassed Tesla in sales. Wang Tuanfu's net worth hit $25 billion. During the massive supply chain bottlenecks a few years ago, that fortress of control allowed them to accelerate while everyone else was stalled out, waiting for parts. It sounds invincible.
It does. But that incredibly closed feedback loop that made them $116 billion, that is exactly what creates a blind spot when the rules of the game change.
How so?
Well, when you build a system where you do absolutely everything yourself, it is incredibly efficient for cost control and for iterating on hardware. Engineers from your battery division can literally walk down the hall and talk to the engineers in your chassis division.
Right. No Zoom calls with third-party vendors in different time zones.
Exactly. But it inherently creates a very insular corporate culture. You're really only talking to yourselves. And when an entire industry undergoes a paradigm shift, in this case from mechanical engineering to digital software, a closed system struggles.
Because they don't have outside perspectives coming in.
Exactly. The definition of a quote-unquote good car is changing way faster than a hardware-first company can pivot.
Which brings us to the actual cracks we are starting to see in that armor. BYD is losing its spark, points out some stark financial warning signs from 2025 and 2026.
Yeah, the numbers are telling a new story.
For the first time in 4 years, in 2025, their operating profit actually fell. And ending in April of 2026, their sales dropped year-on-year for 8 consecutive months.
Which, for a company used to exponential growth, is alarming.
Right. And at one point in early 2026, Geely actually dethroned BYD as China's leading EV seller. I mean, it was just briefly before BYD reclaimed the top spot, but still.
It shows vulnerability.
Exactly. Now, obviously, a massive EV price war in China is crushing profit margins across the board. But the detail that really sticks out to me is the consumer shift. The article notes that young buyers are walking into showrooms and inspecting the dashboard entertainment screens before they look at anything else.
Yeah, the screen is the new horsepower.
But wait a minute, let me push back on the market logic here because this drives me crazy. We are talking about multi-ton vehicles traveling at highway speeds. Are we really saying a giant iPad on the dashboard is now more important to a buyer than a battery that literally won't catch fire?
I mean...
Think about the last time you sat in a rental car. Did you care about the torque, or were you immediately annoyed that Apple CarPlay took 30 seconds to sync? Are consumers just getting distracted by shiny toys?
It is super tempting to dismiss it as consumers just wanting shiny toys. But that misreads the entire commoditization of hardware. Let me stop you there on the safety point, because it's crucial.
Okay.
Yes, a battery that doesn't catch fire is essential. But you're assuming BYD is the only one who can make one?
Well, they have the Blade battery.
True. But competitors, particularly CATL, which is the world's top dedicated battery maker, they are catching up to BYD's hardware achievements. Once safe, long-lasting, fast-charging batteries become the industry baseline across all manufacturers, they cease to be a competitive advantage.
Oh, I see.
It's like having seatbelts. Nobody buys a car because it has seatbelts. They just expect them to be there.
That's a fair point.
Right. If every car on the lot gets 400 miles of range and won't catch fire, the consumer stops worrying about the battery. Hardware sets the floor, but software sets the ceiling.
Software sets the ceiling. I like that.
Yeah, because software, connectivity, AI, voice assistants that actually understand natural language, seamless integration with your digital life, those become the only remaining frontiers for a brand to differentiate itself. The dashboard screen isn't just an iPad, it is the central nervous system of the user's entire experience.
Okay, let's unpack this ecosystem more then. Because if software is the new battleground, the way these companies are arming themselves is fascinating and honestly a bit overwhelming.
Oh, it's a gold rush right now.
You have this massive contrast between BYD's lone wolf isolationism and the aggressive tech alliances forming all around them. Let's slow down and look at the actual players here.
Yeah, let's look at the rivals.
The challengers, companies like XPeng and Li Auto, have a distinct cultural advantage here. They were founded by internet bosses, not hardware engineers.
Which means their corporate DNA is software from day one.
Exactly. And we're seeing a massive wave of auto tech partnerships that essentially treat the car like a giant smartphone. Volkswagen is literally buying system know-how from XPeng.
Because Volkswagen knows they can't code it fast enough themselves.
Right. And you have a division of Huawei selling software and entertainment systems to 5 different car makers. They even helped a state-owned firm, JC, launch a luxury EV called the Makestro.
And that car sells for over $100,000, by the way.
Which is insane. And then you have Geely. Geely isn't even trying to code everything themselves. They are out there making deals left and right, just downloading capabilities from specialists.
Yeah, they're building an Avengers team of software.
Exactly. They partnered with StepFun for AI driving, iFlyTech for voice recognition, and Thundersoft for computing platforms.
All top-tier tech firms in their own niches.
Right. And meanwhile, BYD's stance is incredibly defensive. They want to keep it all in-house. Max Zhang, who is on their autonomous driving team, argues that relying on third-party suppliers leaves you at their whim for upgrades.
Which goes back to their control freak nature.
Right. Control is still their top priority. They're growing their own wheat and forging their own pans, which is great for the physical meal. But now the customer is asking for a digital menu and an app to track their calories, and the chef has no idea how to code.
That is the perfect way to phrase their dilemma.
Well, let me play devil's advocate and defend BYD for a second. Look at Apple. They won the smartphone war by absolutely refusing to let outsiders touch their ecosystem. If BYD outsources their brain to Huawei, don't they just become a dumb metal box carrying someone else's smart software?
Well, no car maker wants to be reduced to the Foxconn of the auto industry, just assembling the metal while a tech giant extracts all the high-margin software revenue.
Right, that's the nightmare scenario for them.
Exactly. But your Apple analogy only works if you can actually write better software than the external alternative.
Ooh, okay.
Apple succeeded because their in-house software was vastly superior to the fragmented early Android market. Does a traditional manufacturing empire have the institutional DNA to outcode dedicated AI and internet giants?
Probably not.
I mean, think about it. Huawei had thousands of engineers who have spent their entire careers thinking exclusively about software architecture, APIs, and user interface flow. BYD engineers have spent their careers thinking about chemical stability and metallurgy.
It's just a totally different language.
Building a great suspension system requires a fundamentally different mindset than building an intuitive voice assistant. But I actually think we need to critique the article's framing here a little bit.
Okay, what's missing?
Is BYD stubbornly refusing to adapt out of hubris, or are they playing a much longer, harder, and more painful game?
Playing the long game, you mean?
Yeah. They might be willing to bleed profits in the short term and suffer through clunky software right now, precisely because they believe that owning the entire value chain, the hardware and the software, is the only way to truly dominate the next 50 years of transportation. They don't want to rent their brain. They want to evolve one.
And that brings us to the ultimate crucible for this lone wolf strategy, which is autonomous driving.
The hardest problem of all.
The hardest digital problem of all. It is one thing to write code for a nice music player on the dashboard. It is another entirely to write code that navigates a chaotic four-way intersection in the rain.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is where BYD's philosophy is facing its most brutal reality check. According to BYD is losing its spark, they've had some pretty major missteps here.
They rushed it, essentially.
They did. They were very quick to deploy their self-driving tech across several models, including the cheaper ones, before the technology was really fully mature, and it led to a rare, incredibly direct public attack from a rival.
Yeah, that quote was brutal.
Yu Chengdong, an executive at Huawei, publicly stated that, quote, so-called good enough and safe intelligent driving are completely different levels.
That is a massive burn in a corporate culture that usually favors indirect language.
Massive burn. But BYD didn't retreat. They doubled down. On May 28th, Wang Chuanfu pledged that BYD will be the world's first company to cover financial losses from autonomous driving accidents.
Which is unprecedented.
It is. And they've updated their headquarters theater. Now, visitors watch a sporty, driverless model spinning donuts in the car park with literally no hands on the wheel.
It's quite the visual.
It is, but let me stop and push back hard on this liability pledge. Think about the legal nightmare here. We're talking about moving steel. One bad line of code in an over-the-air update, a dozen cars crash in downtown Beijing, and BYD is on the hook for millions of dollars. Not to mention the PR disaster.
It sounds reckless on the surface.
It does. This feels like a massive poker game where BYD just shoved all their chips to the center of the table. Is that confidence or just a reckless PR stunt from a company desperate to prove they aren't falling behind?
See, this forces us to look beyond the title of the article. The piece suggests BYD is losing its spark, but taking full, unprecedented liability for autonomous crashes is a remarkably aggressive, calculated move.
Calculated how?
It isn't just PR. It is a brute force strategy for data collection. No one else has dared to match that pledge. If you are Huawei or Geely, how do you even respond to that? BYD is essentially saying to the consumer, look, our competitors might have flashier software presentations, but we are the only ones willing to put our entire balance sheet behind our algorithm.
Wow. Huh.
And there is a mechanical reason for this too. The only way autonomous driving AI improves is by logging millions of miles of real-world edge cases.
Because it has to learn from weird, unpredictable human behavior.
Exactly. Tesla does this by having customers use the software and accept the risk themselves. BYD knows their autonomous tech might not be perfectly mature, but by accepting the financial liability, they remove the consumer's hesitation to turn the feature on.
Ah, so they get the data faster.
They keep their cars on the road, gathering that massive ocean of training data, effectively buying their way through the awkward middle phase of software development using their sheer financial weight.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But even while they're fighting this chaotic software war and taking on massive legal liability, BYD is still trying to use their foundational strength, hardware engineering, to maintain their edge.
Right. They aren't abandoning their roots.
No, and this feels like the last stand of the battery. They are rolling out new battery resilience tech that allows for 10-minute fast charging to get near full capacity.
10 minutes is incredibly fast.
And they have another extreme installation at their headquarters where they literally freeze an EV at negative 30 degrees Celsius to prove the battery's resilience in brutal cold.
Again, with the visceral theater.
Always with the theater. Visually, it's stunning. But psychologically, it is so telling. They are trying to win a software war by doubling down on extreme physical engineering.
Right.
And I have to ask a critical question about diminishing returns here. 10-minute charging is incredible. But is there a ceiling on how much consumers actually care about that specific metric?
That's the million-dollar question.
Once a car charges in 10 minutes, do I really care if the next version does it in 8 minutes? Or at that point, do I care infinitely more about how smart the AI voice assistant is while I'm sitting there for those 10 minutes?
You've just diagnosed the core tension of the entire industry right there. BYD is fighting a war of diminishing marginal returns on hardware.
Right.
Yes, if you live in a freezing climate and your battery dies at negative 30 degrees, nothing else matters. The hardware must be flawless.
It's a non-negotiable.
But BYD's problem is that their competitors' hardware is becoming, quote-unquote, good enough for everyday life. BYD believes deeply that they can stay one step ahead in chemistry. But even they are waking up to the reality that chemistry alone will not win the market in 2026.
Because the consumer expects the chemistry to just work.
Exactly. The 10-minute charge is a technological marvel, but it is a silent one. You don't interact with it, you just experience the absence of an inconvenience.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. Software, on the other hand, is active. It talks to you, it entertains you, it anticipates your navigation needs. It creates an active emotional bond between the driver and the machine. BYD is trying to win an emotional experiential war with cold, hard chemical efficiency, and the market is telling them that efficiency is no longer enough.
So, bringing all these threads together, BYD built an absolute empire on perfect vertical integration. They mastered the supply chain, they mastered chemical engineering, they figured out how to stop batteries from exploding, and they bent the metal better and cheaper than anyone else on the planet.
Truly a manufacturing marvel.
But now they are fighting a chaotic war of code, artificial intelligence, and user experience.
Yeah.
They're refusing to form the alliances that their competitors are using to leapfrog ahead, choosing instead to bet their entire balance sheet on their own ability to evolve an in-house digital brain.
Which leaves you with a broader, almost philosophical question to mull over as you watch this industry transform over the next decade.
What's that?
If the vehicles of the future truly become autonomous living rooms on wheels, where the driving is entirely handled by a computer and the passengers are just existing in a digital space, will the brand name on the hood belong to the company that bent the steel or the tech company that built the operating system? Who really makes the car of the future?
Thanks for listening. Follow us for daily insights into world affairs. And don't forget to like, comment, and share.